Welcome to AndyAudioVault, Dongle Madness. And we are towards the end of 2022, which I believe many would agree has been a very exciting year for audio enthusiasts, especially from the Chi-Fi segment. Suffice to say that we are looking at probably like IEMs released almost on daily basis and even dongles, right? At least 2 or even 3 released per month. So that's really amazing actually. It's even more, aggressive than it was in 2021. All right, without further ado, I would just like to make it simple, right? The purpose of this video is just to summarize what was 2022 for on AndyAudioVault in general. So which means that I will be covering 2 elements, which is the best of the best for both dongles and IEMs. Before I proceed any further, I would like to clarify a few things first, right? Especially regarding how I do things with regard to reviews and stuff like that. This is true for both dongles and IEMs. So for the most part, right, I want my audience to understand that I don't do measurement or graph. So which means that my review are entirely based on subjective. And when it's subjective, it is important to understand where does my point of view looks like, right? So me in general, I am a strong supporter and fan of diffuse field neutral sort of sound. So which means that, right, the sort of sound signature that I like is literally flat, right? Because I have been using something like this, which is Etymotic ER series. This is Etymotic ER2 series, right? This is my reference sound. To most people, it sounded very flat, but I have been using Etymotic since 2006, all right? And for the ultimate reference for sound, recently, for the last 2 years, I have been using this Shure KSE 1005. To me, this is the ultimate, right? The end game sound that I would always refer to for anything from dongle to IEM, right? The output coming from this unit is something which I consider as the best, all right? Having said that, right, anything that I say does not necessarily mean something which I want to assert as being authoritative. It is not a gospel, definitely. Just because I say I like it, it does not automatically mean you will like it, right? So it is important for us to understand that. Okay, let's find out first the overall number that we are talking about for 2022, right? If you look at my site here, right, which is AndyAudioVault Dongle Madness, scrolling down all the way, right? This page will show roughly, or should I say precisely 130 dongles being tested since Dongle Madness started in 2021, right? But obviously, right, there are some of the dongles which are not listed here because of whatever reason it is. But the list, as you see on my screen right now, should exhibit the total number. Okay? So that's for dongle side. For IEM side, right, you can actually check out my profile in Headfi, right, for headgear reviews. As can be seen here, I have roughly around 4 pages, and due to my calculation, actually I have covered this year alone exactly 50 IEMs, 50. All right. Unfortunately, not all of them are reviewed on paper because, for example, like Tripoin Olina, I didn't have a review posted on it, but I have been using it regularly. So does a few other IEMs that I have been, able to listen extensively from loan from friends and stuff like that. But you get the idea. So we have 130 for dongles and 50 for IEMs. So what I will do next is that, right, I will just pick 5 from dongles and 5 from IEMs under $100, and another 5 for IEMs between 100 to 300 US dollar. Another element which is important to understand as well, how do I rate these dongles and IEM? So for dongle, I would tell you this. First and foremost, right, there are 6 elements that I'm looking at, okay? First is sound characteristic, which means that they need to pass neutrality, timbre, and tonality, right? I judge it from there, whether they are like neutral enough, colored, or should I say like organic, non-organic, analog, that kind of things. Number 2 would be technicalities, all right? How good they are with resolution, imaging, soundstage, speed, and transparency, okay? And number 3, power and synergy. So which means that what kind of power output can they effectively put out, and what kind of synergy they can establish with how many partners, how versatile they are, all right? And number 4, of course, features, right? Obviously, most important to me is something like volume adjustment, independent volume adjustment, how refined, how good they are, right? High and low gain options, right? And etc. Anything like that. Even let's say MQA, how well do they do MQA if they are rated as MQA dongles? Number 5 will be efficiency, right? Compatibility, right? Stuff like that. Meaning that how they drain the power of the host when connected to Android phone and stuff like that. And how hot do they get, right? And of course, last but not least, the build itself, right? Price to performance ratio, how much they are priced against the sort of build that they offer, and also the sort of sound quality that they offer. So that's for dongle, okay? And for IEMs, of course, number 1 again, sound curve and tuning, okay? So which means that, right, I will look into the aspect again, how neutral or how colored or how, let's say, harmonish kind of tuning that they have. To me, there is no right or wrong tuning. It's just that I prefer neutral tuning, but it doesn't mean that I will always look down on Harman or this sort of tuning. Okay, number 2, very important as well, timbre and tonal balance, all right? So which means that how organic or how metallic they can be with the timbre and tonal of the sound itself. And of course, number 3, again, very important as well, dynamic transients and presentation, okay? So how does the dynamic feel? Is it coherent or cohesive, or is it like flowing, fluid, harmonious, or is it like, you know, spilling all over the place? Stuff like that. Technicalities, of course, typical, like stuff like soundstage, resolution, imaging, depth, right? Spatial, stuff like that, okay? And of course, number 6, genre versatility. What it means is that their ability to play literally any kind of genre, or how limited they are with specific genre of music. And the good thing is that I listen to practically almost anything, right? From jazz to folk to ballad to classical, even to, of course, my favorite, black metal, right? And of course, last but not least, again, build price to performance ratio. How well they are built and how they are priced in the market with regard to the quality they offered, also on the performance. So 7 elements for IEMs. Sitting at number 5, Tanjim Space. This recently released Tanjim Space is a very, very versatile, neutral, smooth, and really beautiful looking dongle actually, right? It has great amount of power at 4 VRMS, and also the most interesting part is that the 3.5 mm SE, I find it also as equally good as the 4.4 mm, all right? Again, did I say beautiful? This is probably one of the most beautiful dongle you will ever find in the market right now. Number 5, all right? Sitting at number 4, iBasso DC03 Pro. Yeah, this tiny and relatively very affordable dongle is actually probably one of the very few that are not considered as truly neutral, at least from my book, right? This is how you should do a colored dongle, or should I say DAC amp, right? Because the thing about that I like about DC03 Pro is that the sound reproduction, or let's say rendering from this dongle, is that it's very energetic, vibrant, kind of like, really exciting, but right, it does not exhibit any kind of offensive edge to it, right? Regardless if I pair with something very resolving, right, it still sound very graceful, energetic, and the dynamic handling of it is just so very appealing, right? And not forgetting, this is the best in dongle class right now with regard to battery drain at 17 hours, and also so many features here which you can refer back to my full review of it, that really makes it a truly deserving 5-star dongle, sitting at number 4. Right now, sitting at number 3, I don't have it with me right now because it's with my friend, right? It is Questyle M15. All right, so Questyle M15 is essentially a prime example of how proper hi-fi sound, which is so very neutral and so very resolving, should be done, especially coming from ESS Sabre camp. All right, I have many things that I like about Questyle M15. Perhaps about the only thing that I would complain about it is that the lack of physical volume adjustment. However, that element does not deter me from giving it such a good rating at 5-star, and even sitting at 3rd place overall for 2022, because right, it's just simply a wholesome package when it comes to sound quality itself. Right, if you want like hi-fi sound which is like really natural sounding, Questyle M15 it is. Right, now sitting at number 2, right, Hi-Fi Go Bar. Yep, this is really something. The ultimate Swiss knife of dongle. It has the highest power output of anything ever released at 7.2 BRMS. And look at this feature here, like it has literally so many features which are reminiscent of a DAP rather than a dongle, right? And what I love so much about Hi-Fi Go Bar is that the sound itself, the sound reproduction, all right, the way I tune it, it is not just neutral, but it is also natural. It has the hi-fi element to it, but not so aggressively tuned to a point that it being like overly analytical or lacking musicality. Okay, so which means that, right, being smooth, tonally, timbre-wise, everything, it just sounds perfect to my ears, right? Regardless of which partner I pay to and what kind of demand the partner have, right? This Hi-Fi Go Bar can handle them with grace, right? And of course, this is also the very best MQA dongle that you can ever hope for now, right? The only dongle that can unfold maximum full capability of MQA. All right. So number 2. Now, let's go for the champion of 2022. It is none other than Cayin RU6. Yes, I love this Cayin RU6. Perhaps, like many would recall how much I love Centron's Deckpots HD, this one, right? This was the champion for 2021. And I would say this openly, it is still a champion for 2022, right? In the overall standing, Cayin RU6 is actually at 2nd place. But we are talking about 2022 right now. And Cayin RU6 is number 1 for 2022. It is a very simple thing, right? Like I say, I love analog and organic sound, which is still exhibiting a bit of hi-fi kind of precision and resolution, right? So what Cayin RU6 offers is that something which is very difficult to attain on most other dongle. For example, right, if I were to look back at the previous one that I have mentioned earlier, right, which is like Hi-Fi Go Bar, it is natural and organic, and just slightly a bit hint of being analog sounding. Okay, but right, RU6 is truly analog, perhaps because of the design itself. It is a non-delta sigma. It is literally running on R2R, rail to rail resistor, an old technology. very difficult to implement in this kind of size. But here we have it, right? So the sound itself is what makes RU6 a champion to me, and not forgetting, of course, the rich feature that it has also, and the power it offers. And in the absence of Central Stack Port HD, I am completely happy to substitute it with Kain RU6. So the champion for 2022, again, Kain RU6. Sitting at number 5, Celeste Pandamon, which I recently reviewed. Okay, and this is a second iteration of square planar driver, as how Celeste or Kinera would call it. The thing that I find very appealing about this budget planar is that it reminded me of the sound signature of the original Teen Hi-Fi P1. And many of us would remember in the early days, especially like almost 2 years ago, we only have, either you get our Daisy, else, Staff IEM, which is super expensive, or Teen Hi-Fi. And this Pandamon have a similarity to it. But perhaps the only difference being that this Pandamon is the blue curve tune. So which means that it is boosted in the higher frequency, lower frequency, and mid-range, right? So it has a bit more bass as compared to P1. But the key thing is that, right, when powered properly, the performance of this Pandamon is just simply amazing. So that's why I place it at overall number 5. Now, sitting at number 4, Venture Electronic Azure, right? This is definitely one of my favorite for the simple fact that it has, again, that keyword, analog sound, a traditional single dynamic driver sort of tuning. It is not exactly hi-fi or like, crazily like clean or anything like that. In fact, some people might even call it, kind of a bit dirty sounding, like a tube kind of experience. But you know what? The musical element, the vibrancy of the dynamic driver offered by this VE Azure is something which I really treasure. Right? It is highly enjoyable. It is non-fatiguing, right? Because despite all that, thing that's happening there with the exciting sound, it is still very smooth. Okay. Now, that is number 4. We are looking at number 3. Unfortunately, contestant number 3 is not with me today because I have already given it away as a free gift for AudioVault. But it is the recently released also Tangzu Warner SG, right? So Tangzu Warner SG is a personified IEM for safe tuning. And when I say safe tuning, it is relatively still a V sounding unit, right? But the way it is tuned, the whole dynamic handling of it, the transient is that it's reminiscent of a very mature sort of quality that you can expect from a much more expensive IEM. So that alone, right, put Tangzo Warner SG easily, right, in my favorite list as well, sitting at number 3. CCA CXS, right? So this is probably the only sound profile that makes it up to my top 5 list, right? Because we are talking about KZ house sound here, because CCA is literally KZ. And among the many KZ that I have tried since 2021 until now, and which I can barely count if you look at the list, right? In fact, the list does not cover previous. KZ CXS to me is something which has been tuned to a point that it becomes so clean with how it managed the dynamics, with technicalities, and also it does not sacrifice on the element of musicality and smoothness. All right, it is still engaging, it is still vibrant, it has air and everything, right? Just the right amount of it, right? Not overdoing it, right? And to me, that is definitely a trait of a winner, and that's why it's sitting at number 2. All right, so you guys ready for number 1? It is none other than my favorite baby now, which is Tanjim Zero. right? You see here, my Tanjim is special because it is probably the only one running on 4.4 mm balance. I have done a bit of tweaking on this cable. I love it so much. I use it so regularly, right, that I was forced to change the termination here in order to suit all my dongles that I have so that I can use adapter when I switch to single-ended. All right, what I'm trying to say is that, right, I just make it simple. How much I love this Tanjim Zero. This is practically my primary reference IEM right now when I do dongle madness testing. That's how good it is. And the reason I'm doing that because one thing is that the scalability of this Tanjim Zero is amazing. It's even better than Etimotic ER series. I will admit it openly. Many of you knows that I have been a hardcore Etimotic user since 2006. But yet, when I listen to this from day one until today, I just can't help loving the sound. The way it, portrays the sound, the dynamic handling is just so like, very fluid. It is literally like, neutral with a bit of mid bass boost, and it does not overdo anything. In fact, right, if I were to compare to the higher end models, which I will talk later, cover in the next section, right, it may be defined as slightly roll off on certain extension of the region, be it, like say, on the lower or upper frequency. But that roll off is the one that makes it appealing because it just stops precisely at the point where it become unlikely to be offensive. So, this kind of, like say, balance there exhibited by this Tanjim Zero is just simply amazing. And it is definitely appealing for anybody who are into neutral sound, right? If you want neutrality, right, and you just want to spend like crazy money on it, it's just 14 US dollar. Would you believe it? I think this is a mistake on Tanjim to release something this good at this kind of price, because I am joking you not. I am not pulling your legs. I am using this on daily basis, and I'm already making an order for at least another 2 units because this thing is so freaking cheap. I just want to keep 2 more spare, right? So there you have it, the champion for under 100 US dollar, Tanjim Zero. Sitting at number 5, Aful Performer 5. It is not an Aful IEM, and nothing much can be said about this P5, which has not known by many already. It is probably the only best head IEM that I like, for the fact that, the lower frequency of P5 is among the smoothest, the most airy, and one of the most, should I say, entertaining, like sub bass and mid bass performance that I have heard so far this year in 2022. It's pretty much like, a well-rounded IEM nonetheless, right? And from upper to mid-range to lower frequency. So it is not difficult for me to put it at number 5. Coming at number 4, C Audio Bravery, 4-driver balanced amateur, right? And this Bravery is pretty much a very easy to like IEM as well. Highly efficient at 18 ohm, can be driven through anything. And I think perhaps the most important part is that it's very well balanced throughout the entire spectrum, right? The bass, the upper frequency, the mid range, all sounded natural, organic, and very smooth, pleasing, yet amply analytical to me, right? So it is entirely possible for me to actually listen to C Audio Bravery AE, right, for the whole day without any element of fatigue from the sound or from wearing it. Sitting at number 3, Kinera Idun Golden. Okay, so this is a very special IEM. For a very long time before I received the rest of the IEM here, right, Kinera Idun Golden has served a neutral reference for me when it comes to anything from Chi-Fi, because other than Kinera Idun Golden, right, I typically use Etimotic ER2XR as a neutral reference. But since having Kinera Idun Golden, I have been using it instead, because one of the things that make me love this IEM so much is that, right? Again, the the balance of natural and neutral sound. So again, the keyword here, neutral and natural and organic. It is also at the same time still very analytical, yet it does not exhibit any kind of offensive, edgy sound to it, right? And I especially like the airy presentation that it offers as well. The only caveat is that Idun Golden is not an easy IEM to drive. Despite being rated at 32 ohm, it practically behaves like a magnetic planar. Number 3. Sitting at number 2, the hybrid of Simgot EM2 Rolshen. And I did not expect to love this IEM that much, honestly, for the fact that I have not heard of SimGod prior to this, right? But after spending so much time with it, I began to actually appreciate the values that it offers. It is not exactly like a bombastic kind of IEM. Again, the tuning is relatively neutral, right? With some hint of boosting on the lower frequency on both mid bass and sub bass. What I like about it so much is that how versatile it is with literally any genre I throw in it, right? Any kind of music. The dynamic handling, the transient itself, it's like really flowing and fluid, which remind me a lot to the sort of dynamic handling exhibited by Shure KSE 1500. And that simply means that it is very smooth with the dynamic handling itself. And it's relatively bright among the most of my IEM here, but it is never offensive, right? So SimGod EM2R is my number 2. Then we are coming to number 1. Surprise, surprise. Bequest Winter. I must admit, it is not easy to say the name Bequest or to spell it out, but Winter is easy, right? This is the latest addition to my IEM collection this year, and without much difficulty at all, it is so easy for me to love this. For the fact that number 1, again, the tuning is relatively neutral or close to being neutral, with just very mild hint of boosting on the lower frequency. So again, going back to my number 2, I already mentioned to you that this SimGod Rolshen EM2 is my favorite, right? What Winter brings into the picture is that a slightly subdued version of Rolshen EM2, yes, meaning that Winter has a bit more of reserve energy as compared to SimGod EM2R. And why is it appealing to me? Because despite being a bit more reserved with the energy level, with the vibrancy, it does not lack in the resolution and texture. The details are retained. So which means that despite, right, the energy level on the upper frequency is slightly like kind of a less, right? But it does not lack in the actual sparkle itself. You know, the feel of it, the micro detail, I can feel every bit of it. And of course, just like, you know, the top 3, this Winter can literally be used with any kind of music, any genre. It doesn't matter, like, you know, highly chaotic black metal or highly like fluid, you know, classical or jazz or smooth rendering or ballad or anything like that. It just sounds perfectly engaging and entertaining. I will say that the first time when I received it out of the box, even out of the box, I wasn't able to put it down because I was so engrossed with the sound for up to 3 hours. And then after that, the rest is history. So the champion for this year, by the way, this is bone conduction and dynamic driver. So the bone conduction itself, in a way, imparted the major quality of how the upper frequency works. And also, again, I should also touch on the lower frequency of Bequest. It actually has a similarity, in fact, to a full P5, but not in the volume, or should I say the density, the mass of it, but in the terms of quality of the reverb and the lower end frequency, like, you know, the resonance and the decays. It just simply addictive. I repeat, This is my number one for 2022. Request Winter. Thank you so much for hanging on still with me despite all the lengthy, ranking and everything. But one more thing. I would like to actually mention a bit on the budget segment for dongles because the top five that I mentioned just now wasn't exactly a budget type, but for something which is ultra compact, highly affordable, and sounds relatively good or amazing, VE Abigail Pro is worth the mention. It is in fact something that I would consider as to be the best dongle of 2022 for ultra compact category, especially for anything under $20. VE Abigail Pro, right? And of course, right, last but not least, on the IEM side, despite all the 10 IEM that I have mentioned just now, the reality of it is that, right, I spend so much time on this Tanjim Zero. I know it sounds crazy. This thing is probably the cheapest among all of that. But the fact that I am reaching out for this Tanjim Zero from time to time, for the fact that it is like a easy, a bitter IM that I can use anywhere without worrying to damage it. It's so easy to replace, right? And I still get amazing sound of it. It just proves that Tanjim Zero is something which is I unconsciously love. All right. So that's it pretty much on that aspect. So to conclude on everything, 2022 has been a great year for AndyAudioVault Dongle Madness. And first and foremost, perhaps the most important thing is that I would like to thank you for all the support, the never ending kind of encouragement that I receive, right? Be it through email, through my site. By the way, my site has actually reached over 500,000 hits this year alone as of today, and almost 100K individual visitor, and you are one of them, right? Thank you so much for that. Please, right? I will do my best to provide the best content that will be beneficial to everyone. And of course, please do not forget to click subscribe on this YouTube channel that I have, which I started like a month ago, and also join my Facebook group, which is called Dongle Madness, right? You can find the link within my site. Feel free to join Dongle Madness in a whole. Again, thank you so much. See you next year.